Peter Selgin, you are my first guest in from the English-speaking world. I had so far guests from the Francophone world, but you are the first in English. So thank you for accepting my invitation.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So just for the listeners who don't know you, a very short presentation. You are an author of fiction, nonfiction, theater. I know you even wrote some plays.
Mhm.
And you're also an artist, a very good artist. You do, among many other things, book covers. So you have many hats, which, by the way, is the topic of the book we're going to talk about today. And you teach creative writing at Georgia College.
Yes, in Milledgeville, Georgia.
Okay. So I I read only two of your books, two of your novels, but they were both memorable. We're going to talk today about your latest novel, which is this, A Boy's Guide to Outer Space, published by Regal House Publishing last year.
Yes.
And we're going to make some references. I don't know if we're going to have time, but this is your previous novel, which is called Duplicity. And
Mhm.
it was published, I think, in 2020 by Serving House Press.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So I just want to say that Duplicity was one of the most original, intelligent, and entertaining novels I have ever read. So it really, I don't know if we're going to have time. We're going to make maybe some references
Okay.
to it. And
Well, thank you.
A Boy's Guide to Outer Space is also very good, but a very different type of novel. And okay, let me just start by, I'm going to start in a kind of a narcissistic way because I noticed that I actually gave you a blurb for this novel and I forgotten about it.
Mm.
And I was really puzzled when I read my blurb because I compared your novel to a classic of French literature, Le Grand Maulne by Alain Fournier. And
Mhm.
just very quickly, this is in French surveys, I mean, in surveys of French literature, this novel comes as the most popular and the most beloved by the French public, Le Grand Maulne. It was published in 1913. It's a classic. So it's definitely a flattering comparison. It's just that on the surface, the books are very different. But
Mhm.
now in rereading your novel, I realized why I made this comparison. So first of all, the protagonists are prepubescent boys. In the French novel, he's 15. In your novel, I think he's 13.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in spite of the fact that on the surface they are very different, what made me make the comparison is that in both novels, the boy is at this time in life when it's on the threshold to adulthood. So the novel is also a sort of a novel of coming of age or of initiation from childhood into adulthood. And the boy is experiencing the world as a sort of a mysterious universe, or rather, he is waiting for something out of this world, something mysterious to happen. And
Mhm.
that mystery comes from outside in the person in embodied into another male character who is older, and that sort of is the door that opens toward this mysterious world that the boy is waiting for. So this is the only comparison, but I think at this level it works. And so having said this, I just want to invite you now, so you can tell us in your own words, uh, let's say what this book is about. um,
Well, getting back to it, would you pronounce the name of the novel for me? Le
so
Grand
the novel, yeah, it's Le Grand Maulne, which is hard to translate.
Molna.
The Great Maulne.
Mol
Maulne is the name of the.
is the name. It's like the Great Gatsby, Molna. But I was.
Exactly, and The Great Gatsby, apparently the title was inspired by Le Grand Maulne,
Oh,
apparently.
was it? I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know that. But I had read several versions of Le Grand Moulin and
Mm.
over the years. But between the time when I last read that book and when I wrote A Boy's Guide, I would say that decades had gone by, and I wasn't consciously, certainly not consciously aware of any comparison or any influence. But I think that it was there under
Mm.
the surface because I happen to love that novel, as you said, so many people do. In fact, I recently finally found what I think is a just translation in English. I think many of the translations are poor. Actually, most translations are probably poor, but this one was very good, and I'm afraid I can't remember who the translator was. But I do think what the two books have in common is this exploration of wonder,
Exactly. Yeah.
the sense of wonder, which in that book is a lost paradise, and in my book is in a way a found paradise. So this boy in my book who has a rather gloomy sense of the world, a rather gray and gloomy outlook in the wake of his father's death when he was 11, uh, discovers the sense of wonder that was lost with his father's death. And he discovers it, uh, though he searches for it in the stars, he actually finds it right in his backyard, in the rather um, uh, superficially anyway, dismal world of a dying hat factory town. So the books do have that
They do. They do.
that comparison, even though it's a little bit inverted.
Mm. Yeah, but now I have to say, I too read Le Grand Moulin when I was very young. I read it in French once when I was, I don't know, in my early 20s. So my memory too, it was very vague. But that, definitely there was something there that made me come with that compare. And the fact, I had no idea that you read the novel because I thought, as an American, it's unlikely, but obviously you did read it. But
Oh yeah,
speaking of paradise, there is you made me think there is actually in your novel there is a sentence in which you say that childhood is the true holy land, and you compare it to a lost paradise. So there is that too.
yeah.
I
There's
mean, that's another aspect.
an overt passage there where the boy it's a flashback, and he's remembering, I think, his last birthday when his father was alive, and the father took him with the mother to a place that actually exists, or based on a place that actually exists in Waterbury, Connecticut, which is a town north of the towns that I fictionalized, which were indeed hat factory towns of Bethel and Danbury, Connecticut, which I conflated into a single town called Hattertown. But to the north of us, Waterbury was a wire and screw factory town making items out of brass. And there in this town, in the scene that's recalled in the flashback, there's a big hill on which an eccentric man built a replica, a small scale Jerusalem. And it was called Holy Land. And that's where the father takes the boy on his, I think it's his 11th or so birthday, and they traipse through these miniature models of Jerusalem and the Holy Sepulchre and all this stuff. And anyway, it's sort of it left a lasting impression on Half, the boy. His nickname is Half. Uh, and it was really his last memory of something wonderful and beautiful with his father in the world in which his father existed that he's
Yes.
lost. Yeah.
Yeah, that is, I forgot about that, but yeah, so that's another aspect. But speaking of, we're not going to go into why he's called Half. I mean, there are too many things
Yes. Read the
to
damn book if you
narrate.
want to find
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
So, so his father is dead. There is something that is important in a novel, something that his dead father has said that it's going to be, one of those recurrent themes in the novel. So tell us what is the statement that his father made that is going to stay with the boy? Um,
Right. Yeah. In the opening pages of the book, there's a scene with the father, and they are watching, as they do regularly, they're watching a hat factory burn down. And in this town, because the hatting industry has suffered so greatly economically, a lot of the owners of these factories, and this is true of the actual places they were based on, took to arson to burn these factories down in the attempt to collect insurance money as a last desperate measure. And so they periodically watch these fires. They become a source of predictable entertainment in the town. And during one of these outings, as the fire is burning, the father, rarely gives the boy some advice. And he says, "I have three pieces of advice to give you." And he ends up, he can't remember the third. But then the next morning, in the middle of the night, that night, the father goes to the boy uh, into his room and says he remembers. And the piece of advice he gives him is follow your fears. Follow your fears. And that does act as a sort of catalyst for what happens in the novel.
Exactly, yeah. And so here I want to come to an important point because it turns out that the the boy has a fear of water. So, excuse me, I noticed that in this novel, water plays a very important part, and I noticed the same thing in the previous novel. So I'm curious if this theme is by accident or if you constructed it in this way on purpose.
So the answer is yes and yes. I mean, it's accidental in the sense that it's instinctive. I seem to be drawn to water in many ways, both uh, physically. I like to swim. I'm a devoted swimmer. I love boats. I love ships. I love pretty much anything to do with water. I am an Aquarius, though I don't know how much stock I put in any of that. Um, And so I do love water. I'm attracted to it, and it has attracted me as a theme in my writing. Uh, Not with any great agenda, but I first started writing short stories, and sure enough, found that many of them had watery settings and themes. And I indeed, my first collection is called Drowning Lessons, and it's a collection of stories related by water. So that's been going on for a long time, and I suspect that probably almost anything I write from now on will have some water in it in some way. But then, having realized that water was there, then you start exploring it thematically and its implications. And with A Boy's Guide to Outer Space, I think one of the important aspects of water is this, that it represents inner space. Um, and so there is again, an inversion. You have the boy who's looking to regain his sense of wonder in a world that has turned dreadfully gloomy for him after his father's death. And he's looking for it in outer space. He's obsessed with NASA. This is during the early 60s when Kennedy had promised to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade. And so he's got his telescope and his books and he's looking and waiting and hoping some star will be born or some miracle will occur out there in the solar system or in the galaxy. Uh, but then he discovers indeed that the space where he's going to find his sense of wonder is in inner space, which takes the form literally of a lake that he swims in. He learns to swim. He conquers his. I'm giving the whole novel away here. Well, that's too bad. If you read for plot, you probably want to read something else anyway. Uh, Not that it doesn't have a plot, but the question of finding things within ourselves
Well, I
that
mean,
are already there, they're not don't need to be given to us externally.
so in that sense, the the man in blue plays this role of trigger of the theme because he says that the deepest water in which you're going to drown is yourself, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And he talks about the water as this element that is it's odorless, it's colorless, it has no identity of its own, it
Right.
has no shape,
Mhm.
but because it has no identity, it's the most versatile of substances. And this is going to come later in the novel when we find out more about his identity, because just like in Duplicity, the man in blue hides his identity. So this is another common theme. The
Yes, it is a common theme now that you mention it. In Duplicity, he switches his identity with that of
yeah.
his twin. That's a twin novel. I'm thinking of The Inventors, which is a third book, which is a memoir about my father and an English teacher I had, each of whom changed their identities, either through denial or through lying, manufacturing. So that's a recurrent theme for me, and I think part of that too may have to do with having been a twin, being a twin, where your identity is already a sort of, in a way, questionable thing or compromised thing in that you are identical almost to this other human being. So, what is your identity as distinct from that of this other person who is so much like you in so many ways and has the same DNA largely, right? So, I think that as a young person, the question of identity was very important to me and became more so when I realized that uh, two of the people most important to me, my father and this teacher I had in eighth grade, with whom I became very close, were both had questionable identities or identities that they had altered or manipulated or denied or fabricated.
Well, excuse me for interrupting, but I would have thought that as a twin, the most important person for you would be your twin. Your
Well, yeah, that's the idea. And
um,
indeed, my brother ultimately is and has been the most important person probably in my life. But uh, for whatever reason, I had a very strong individualist streak, and I wanted to be myself, and I didn't like the idea of there being another me. I wanted to be
uh-huh.
unique. Being unique was very important. And I remember the few times when our mother would get us to dress more or less alike in matching sweaters, maybe with the colors reversed or something. I didn't like that. And I really hated it when friends or their parents said, "Oh, here are the Selgin boys, the Selgin twins, the Selgin boys." I thought, well, to hell with you. I'm Peter. I don't lump me together with this other guy. So identity has always been very important to me and something that I've thought about a lot in my life.
Well, that of course that makes total sense. But what I also liked in Duplicity is that the theme of the twin becomes the theme of the double, and you make of it a sort of a meditation on human nature, in the sense that each of us has a double and that we are made of doubles. That's probably the thing that I very much like, this philosophical aspect of Duplicity, which I mean, it's really an extraordinary novel. Um, yeah.
Yeah, the idea of I can't remember the phrase exactly, but it's out of quantum physics, and the idea of something being in two places at once, existing, having two different realities, and there's so many ideas that came out of that book, having to do with dualities and inversing, and uh, just the possibilities that that whole question arouses about who we are and can we be ourselves, about equal opposites. That's really the term that's
Hmm.
most
Hmm.
pertinent to that book. I know we're getting sidetracked a little bit into duplicity, but the idea of equal opposites
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
uh, how there are two sides to everything and to everyone. And then the question of failure and success and artistic success versus commercial failure, that the book explores overtly.
Yeah.
But you could take
Yeah.
that idea much further and say that every one of us we all contain our equal opposite. Yeah, we all have our twins. And you could even say, by further extension, that the reader of a book and the author of the book or the narrator of the book are equal opposites. They
Yes.
each
Yes.
they each contribute vitally, half and half, to
Hmm.
the to a process. You can't have a novel; it's incomplete without the reader.
Yeah. No,
It's
it's true.
incomplete without the narrator.
Hence my depression, because I'm thinking in a world without readers, there can be good writers. If they aren't good readers, there are no good writers, basically.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like a stage play where you've written a stage play and it can't be produced. You have no
Yeah.
theater, you have no director, you have no audience, and I feel too that a novel, in the same way, it's not doesn't happen unless it has a reader.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Let's go back to the boys
a boy's guide.
to a boy's guide to outer space.
Yeah.
So okay, so we're talking about the importance of water and did we talk about the initiation of the boy, because that's an important how he overcomes his fear and who makes him overcome his
Oh,
fear. I don't think we did talk about.
Yes. So his greatest fear is water.
Yeah.
He had bad experience when he was young, when his father, who was whose decisions in life were often far from uh, reasonable, tried to teach him to swim by throwing him in a lake when he was very young, and he nearly drowned and was rescued by a relative stranger. So he's had this paranoia about water. And anyway, the man who teaches him to swim is just this guy who the boys he hangs out with have been spying on, as young boys will, anyone who's curious and who goes around town dressed in blue in a blue jumpsuit or whatever they're called, coveralls, collecting items into a rucksack. And so it's decided one day by the group's leader that half the boy is to spy on him and learn more about him. And one day when he's spying on him, he is led to this cliff at the side of this lake and watches as the man strips naked and dives head first off of this rock into the lake, which no one in the town has ever done, at least without getting badly hurt. And it turns out that the man is a very good swimmer. And when the boy has his follow your fears uh, imperative handed to him by the father, when he remembers that, he thinks, well, I need to conquer my fear of water. I must learn to swim. And obviously that the reason I've been connected with this person is because he's the one to do it.
Yeah. So,
So
so the mysterious man in blue is going to initiate the boy into
yeah, he actually
swimming.
seeks the stranger out, and as a result, they have a secret friendship because he is seen as a sort of weirdo and questionable character, and partly out of embarrassment, uh, Half does not tell his friends that uh, beyond spying on him, he's actually um, taking these lessons
You know,
and
it just, excuse me,
becoming a
just
friend.
occurred, it just occurred to me because I didn't think before, but the fact that you chose this nickname for him, Half, did you have anything else in mind? Any?
Well, it's interesting how these things happen. You know, this is the
Mhm,
wonderful thing about art is the happy accidents. The best things happen. The best symbols don't come from trying to make them
mhm.
up and plant them into the novel like Easter eggs. In fact, that probably never works. I'm almost positive that Daisy's green light at the end of the dock in Gatsby was not something that was cunningly thought out by Fitzgerald. Said, "Oh, I'm going to have a symbol. This green light's going to be a symbol." I think that he stumbled on it. He probably saw a green light out in Long Island someplace. He said, "Well, that looks nice." And now people can have all kinds of meanings attached to it. It means money, it means envy, it means this or that. With half, same thing. Now, I had a dear friend I went who was a neighborhood kid who could be the model of one of the boys in the story, and he did have half a finger that was blown off
Mhm.
by I forget how he lost it. It may have been a fireworks accident, though I think that's my fictional explanation. And anyway, I gave half a finger, and then I thought, well, his nickname will be Half because he has half a middle finger. But now that you mention it, well, half is something incomplete.
Yeah.
Half is something that needs its other half. And so you could look at that thematically and say that in a way this boy is being completed by discovering his sense of wonder, by discovering inner space, whatever.
But I just realized this other thing because speaking of half and again of double, the theme of the water is
Mhm.
doubled by the theme of the, I don't know, the air or the sky or the universe or the
Outer
stars,
space. Yeah. And of
which
course,
is
our
what he's
body,
trying to reach for. He's trying to reach for the stars.
right. Yes.
Yeah.
His line is, uh,
Trying to
he
partake of
wanted
something
to
of the infinite.
partake, partake of something of the infinite. That's his phrase.
Mm.
And well, of course, we're made of water too. We
Mhm.
are water essentially. or 70% or 75, I don't know what the figure is. But the idea of being half, you could look at as being half filled or
Mhm.
half complete. I don't know. Um, but yeah, so those are happy accidents when they happen.
Yeah.
You follow your instincts when you write. And sometimes I had, I forget who it was who said it to me. I think it was Robert Stone, the writer Robert Stone. He said, to be a fiction writer, you really shouldn't be too smart. You really can't be too intellectual and be a great fiction writer because there has to be that almost dumb side that does things by accident, that does things unknowingly,
I agree. Yeah.
as Keats put it, going into mysteries. Uh, if you know too much and if you're too intellectual and you analyze everything, you'll just kill those things before they ever
Exactly.
happen. So you have to be a little bit stupid to be a good novelist.
But you
Unfortunately,
need you need instinct because the
you need
instinct
good
is so
instincts, and unfortunately, the inverse of that is you can't be too stupid and write a good
well, I don't know, it's unfortunately. Yeah, well,
book. So I know plenty who try. Anyway,
okay.
uh,
But speaking of, but for me, it's so obvious once I saw it that there is this double theme, water versus air or stars.
hmm.
And again, I don't think you did it on purpose, did you? Like to have both together, or
No, it certainly wasn't a conscious
it
thought
wasn't conscious,
at
no.
at inception
Yeah.
or no, I don't know if it ever became that conscious. I do
Yeah.
know that when the book cover was created, you'll
Hmm.
see that it is water and stars mixed together. It can be
Yeah,
either way,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
right? You see the waves and then
Yeah.
there's stars. So it's in a way a coming together of those two spaces.
Okay, we're not going to give too much of the second half of the novel or of the ending, but we need to tell the listeners that the novel is going to become more and more mysterious, focused around the man in blue, whose identity is going to become central to the quest. And I was a little surprised by when his identity became obvious. I was a little surprised. How did you? Because again, it seemed it it didn't seem. I didn't see it coming. Let's put it that way. So how did you come up with the idea of introducing that element related to World War II in the novel?
Well, at the risk of dissolving some of the mystery,
Mhm.
uh, by explaining it mechanically,
Mhm.
uh, I will say that this was a big struggle in writing the book because initially I only knew what those boys know, which is there's a stranger and his behavior is eccentric, and no one
That's
knows
what I
why he's
thought. In
here.
reading the novel, I thought that as a writer, I thought that this is how you must have written the novel without knowing initially.
I had no idea who he
Uh-huh.
was, but I felt very strongly that I had to find out.
Hmm.
And so I spent a lot of time asking myself, who is this man? Where did he come from? Why is he here? What is he doing? All of those things were mysterious to me,
Okay.
as they are in the beginning of the book to the reader. And so uh, I I think I spent many, many hours and days dwelling on that. And certain things came to mind that I rejected, that didn't seem right or that seemed too obvious or easy. And slowly it dawned on me that he had a past involved with World War II, which was for him only about 15 years ago. And uh, and then the other things just started naturally filling in. And again, without giving away too much of a plot, I slowly chipped away at the mystery, the way, the sculptor chips away at a block of stone to reveal this person's past to myself. And I wrote it out endlessly. And I wrote about, I won't say a novel's worth, but about 100 pages of this person's story. And then I had the problem of what do I do with it? Where do I put it? How much do I use? How do I fit it into this
So
narrative?
you did you write that story separately and then you
More or
integrated it?
less, more or less. I mean, I took copious notes and then I put them together. And yes, I wrote it out as a narrative, a very long narrative. in the third person, telling the story. And then I thought, well, how does it get into the book? How do we readers, how does the reader learn all of this about this person? So you know these things happen, but again, is that question of, uh, a lot of it, an experience, what we call the experience in fiction, isn't the information
Mhm.
sometimes. It's how the information is learned or whether it's learned at all. So, in other words, it could be quite possible. And it occurred to me, and I even considered the fact that, yes, all of this is true about this character, but we'll never know it, and not because the narrator will never know it. He
Mhm.
never learns it. Leave it out so that it becomes the hidden part of the iceberg forever.
Mhm.
That was interesting, but it didn't sit right to me. And I have to admit that having spent weeks and months researching and discovering this story, I was rather loath not to share it somehow with the reader. I put so much work into it. But I also did say to myself, Peter, that can't be the reason for it to be in the novel. It
Mhm.
has to come out because it has to come out, and it does so in a meaningful, truthful way. In other words, you can't use it just because you worked hard on it.
Mhm.
But then I tried slicing it and dicing it through the book, putting in these little, and then I realized finally that indeed the man tells his story. He tells his own story in his words to the boy, and I won't spell out exactly how that works out structurally in the book. I think I'll leave that so readers can discover it. But I really, really struggled with how to uh, disseminate
Mhm.
that story within the novel. What was the best approach? And it was only when I figured that out that I was able to complete the book.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a writer, I can definitely understand structurally how that would be difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna stop here for the time being, but we can continue this discussion some other time because you have other books. So thank you so much for again for accepting my invitation, and I hope our listeners are going to go and order these two books, which I very, very warmly and highly recommend. So once again, thank you.
Thank you, Alta. It's been my pleasure.